You think you know defeat, don't you? You've tasted it, felt it creep up your spine, claw at your pride, whisper in your ear that you're not enough. Eh. But let me ask you something. Did you really lose? Or was it your ego that couldn't bear the sting of not being the biggest fish in the pond? Oh, I know. It hurts, like a knife twisting right here, right in the chest. The ego doesn't like to lose, does it? No, no. It screams, it howls, it paces in its little cage, waiting for a crack, a moment to lunge and bite and reclaim the throne. You see, the ego doesn't die when it's defeated. It doesn't wither away like some wilting flower. No, it lingers, it festers. That's the funny thing about ego. It's a parasite, a clever little devil that whispers all the right words in your ear. You're better than this. You don't deserve this. You're above them. You're above it all. And the cruelest joke of all, you believe it. Oh, yes, you do. You want to believe it. You cling to it like it's the only thing keeping you afloat in the sea of your insecurities. But let me tell you something. The ego doesn't save you from drowning. No, it ties a nice, shiny rock around your neck and drags you deeper. That's the real punchline, isn't it? The thing you think will protect you is the very thing pulling you under. But you can't let it go, can you? Because the ego, it never accepts defeat. It can't. Defeat isn't just a slap on the wrist for the ego. No, it's an insult, a humiliation, a mortal wound to its very existence. You see, the ego is fragile. So fragile it builds walls, fortresses really, to protect itself. Layers upon layers of lies, arrogance, bravado, all to avoid one simple truth. You're not invincible. But here's the twist. The more you try to protect it, the more it controls you. You think you're in charge? Oh, how cute. You think you're the puppet master pulling the strings? No. The ego has you dancing to its little tune, and you don't even know it. You know, they say pride comes before the fall. But ego? Oh, ego. It's the fall itself. Pride's the little spark that lights the match. But ego is the fire that burns the whole house down. It's the voice in your head that whispers, "You're better than them." Ha! And the funny part? You never even know the tricks on you. Let me tell you something about ego. It doesn't lose. Ever. Oh, it might seem like it bows its head, waves the little white flag, takes its beating and crawls away. But it's not retreating. No, it's plotting, it's scheming, it's licking its wounds and sharpening its teeth. Because ego doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. And it damn well doesn't accept defeat. Not really. You lose the game. And what does ego say? It was rigged. You lose the fight. And what does ego say? They cheated. You fall short, and ego says, "You didn't fail. The world just doesn't see your greatness yet." Ah, but the truth, the cold, bitter truth, you weren't ready. You weren't strong enough. You weren't smart enough. You weren't enough. But admitting that? Oh, no, no, no. That's a knife straight to the heart of the ego. And the ego, my friend, would rather choke on its pride than bleed out on honesty. Here's the thing about defeat. It's not the end. No. Defeat is just a doorway. A lesson wrapped in pain, tied with a bow of humiliation. But the ego doesn't see that. It doesn't want to see that, because defeat isn't just losing, it's an insult, a direct attack on its inflated sense of self. And the ego doesn't do insults. It fights back. Oh, it fights dirty. It lashes out, claws at anything within reach, turns the mirror away so you don't have to look at yourself too closely. Because if you did, you'd see the cracks, the flaws, the weaknesses. And the ego? It can't have that. No, no, no. It needs you to believe you're untouchable, invincible, perfect. And when you're not, when reality creeps in, whispers in your ear, you're only human. The ego shouts louder, not me, not me. But here's the joke, the punchline you're too afraid to laugh at. The ego knows that it's lying. It knows it's fragile. And that's why it screams so loud. That's why it fights so hard. Because deep down, in the darkest, quietest corner of your mind, it knows the truth. And the truth is, the ego isn't as big as it pretends to be. You ever see a wounded animal? It's not just sad, it's dangerous. Backed into a corner, snarling, teeth bared, eyes wide with panic. That's the ego when it's been hurt, desperate, erratic, lashing out at anything that moves. But here's the kicker. The ego isn't trying to protect you. It's not fighting to keep you alive. No, it's fighting to keep itself alive. It doesn't care if you're happy, doesn't care if you grow, doesn't care if you learn something from the fall. All it cares about is the mask, the illusion, the lie it tells the world and you that it's untouchable. And if it has to destroy you to protect that lie, so be it. You see, defeat is freedom. Yes, freedom. Because when you lose, when you fall, when you're stripped of all the titles and trophies and shiny little labels the world sticks on you, you're left with the one thing the ego can't control: reality. And reality? Oh, reality is a cruel teacher. It doesn't coddle, doesn't sugarcoat. It points a finger in your face and says, "You're not enough." But here's the beauty of it. Reality doesn't stop there. It doesn't just tell you what you're not. It shows you what you could be. If you're willing to listen, if you're willing to let go of the ego and face the truth. But that's the hard part, isn't it? Because the ego doesn't just whisper sweet lies in your ear. It chains you to them, binds you with fear. Fear of being seen as weak, fear of being judged, fear of being ordinary. And those chains, they're heavier than any failure. You ever wonder why the ego hates defeat so much? Why it fights it with every ounce of strength, every dirty trick, every desperate lie? It's because defeat is the one thing the ego can't control. Oh, it can spin a loss into an excuse, can twist failure into a learning experience. But true defeat, the kind that breaks you down to your core, that's the ego's worst nightmare. Because in that moment, when the mask slips, when the cracks in the armor are too big to hide, the ego has to face itself, and it hates what it sees. But here's the thing, you don't have to hate it. You don't have to hate the cracks, the flaws, the broken pieces, because those pieces, they're real, they're honest, they're you. Not the polished, perfect version the ego tries to sell, not the superhero fantasy it paints in your mind. The real you. And the real you, the one who's fallen, who's failed, who's been knocked down and gotten back up again, that you is stronger than any ego. Let's talk about resilience, shall we? Oh, the ego loves to pretend it's resilient, loves to puff out its chest, point to all the battles it's survived, all the wounds it's endured. But resilience isn't about pretending you're unbreakable. It's about accepting that you're not, and fighting anyway. The ego doesn't fight for you. It fights for itself, for its pride, its image, its delusion. But you, the real you don't fight because you're afraid of losing. You fight because you know what's worth winning. And that's the difference. The ego fights to avoid defeat. You fight to earn victory. You know, there's a strange thing about humans. You don't fight battles because you need to win. You fight battles because you can't stand to lose. Big difference, huh? The ego? It doesn't care about victory. It doesn't care about climbing the mountain or reaching the top. No, no, no. The ego just wants to make sure no one else gets to stand higher than you. That's its game. That's its obsession. Not about growth or strength. It's about domination. But domination isn't power. Oh no, domination is a cage. A tight little box where you sit, surrounded by your trophies and titles, clutching them close because you're terrified someone will take them away. And that fear, that's the leash the ego keeps around your neck. Tight, tight, always pulling you back when you get too close to freedom. Here's the irony of the whole thing. The ego tells you it's saving you, protecting you, but really, it's the thing that keeps you small, weak, afraid. And when you fail, because you will fail, it doesn't offer you a hand up, doesn't teach you anything. No, it tells you to sulk, to stew, to point fingers and lay blame. Because the one thing the ego can't stand is accountability. Let's dig a little deeper, shall we? Let's get to the ugly, twisted roots of it. The ego doesn't just whisper lies in your ear. No, no. It builds a whole damn reality around them. Makes you believe that you're above the rules, that you deserve the best without earning it, that the universe owes you something because, oh, you're special, aren't you? You're the exception. But when the cracks start to show, when the walls start to crumble, that's when the ego gets desperate. It doubles down. It's not your fault, it says. The world's against you. They don't understand you. They're just jealous. And you believe it. Oh, how you believe it. Because it's easier to blame the world than admit you're not as perfect as you pretend to be. You see, defeat is a mirror. A cruel, unforgiving mirror that shows you exactly who you are. But the ego, it hates mirrors, hates them with a passion, because mirrors don't lie. And the ego, it lives on lies. You ever notice how people react when they lose? Some rage, some sulk, some lash out at the nearest poor soul who crosses their path. But me, I laugh, because losing is funny. Oh, it's not funny in the moment, of course. No, in the moment it's gut-wrenching, soul-crushing. But when you step back, when you see the bigger picture, losing is hilarious. Because losing, it strips away the ego, peels it back layer by layer until there's nothing left but you, the real you, the raw, vulnerable human you. And that's when the real work begins. That's when you have a choice. You can rebuild, stronger, smarter, wiser, or you can let the ego crawl back in, put the mask back on, and pretend it never happened. But pretending? That's just delaying the inevitable. Because life has a funny way of exposing the truth, doesn't it? But let's talk about those who never lose, or so they claim, the untouchables, the ones who walk around with their heads held high, acting like they've never tasted defeat. Let me tell you something about those people. They're lying. Oh, they've lost. Maybe not publicly, maybe not where the world can see, but behind closed doors, in the dead of night, when it's just them and their thoughts, they've lost. And their ego? Their ego is screaming, wailing, clawing at their insides because it can't stand the thought of being anything less than perfect. Perfection. What a joke. There's no such thing. But the ego? Oh, it loves the idea of perfection, loves to chase it, cling to it, pretend it's within reach. And when it falls short, as it always does, it doesn't admit defeat. No, it just moves the goalposts, changes the story, rewrites history to make it seem like it never failed at all. But you can't rewrite reality. You can't escape the truth. And the truth is this: defeat is inevitable. It's not a question of if, but when. And when it comes, the real question is, will you face it? Or will you let your ego hide you from it? You see, ego doesn't just refuse to accept defeat. It refuses to grow. It clings to the old, the familiar, the safe. Because growth is scary. It means stepping outside the fortress. It means leaving the comfort of the lies you tell yourself and facing the chaos of the unknown. And chaos? Oh, chaos is the ego's worst enemy. Because chaos doesn't care about your titles, doesn't care about your pride, doesn't care about the little stories you tell yourself to feel important. Chaos strips it all away, leaves you naked, exposed, vulnerable. But that's the beauty of it. Because in chaos, there's freedom. In defeat, there's growth. In brokenness, there's strength. But only if you're willing to let go of the ego. Only if you're willing to see defeat not as an end, but as a beginning. The ego, my dear friend, is a funny little creature. It wraps itself in layers of illusions and calls it armor. It tells you, don't worry, I'll protect you. But what does it protect you from? Not pain, not struggle, not the inevitable punches life throws. No, it protects you from growth, from change, from the one thing you desperately need but are too afraid to face: truth. Truth, you see, is a dagger, sharp, unforgiving. It cuts through the lies, the excuses, the delusions, and the ego. It hates truth because truth reveals its weakness, its fragility, its utter dependence on your need to feel superior, invincible, untouchable. But here's the thing: the truth doesn't care about your ego. The truth is indifferent, cold, relentless. And when it hits, when it slices through the ego's defenses, it leaves you raw. That's the moment most people fear, the moment they'll do anything to avoid. They'll deny it, fight it, run from it. But the joke, the big cosmic joke, the more you run, the more the truth follows. The more you fight, the sharper its blade becomes, and the more you deny it, the deeper it cuts when it finally breaks through. But the ego has its tricks, doesn't it? Its little bag of illusions. You don't need to change. The world doesn't understand you. Oh, the world understands just fine. It's you who doesn't understand yourself, because the ego doesn't want you to. It wants to keep you in the dark, wants you to believe its lies, because the moment you see the truth, the moment you understand yourself, the ego loses its power. And that terrifies it. You see, the ego is nothing without you. It's a parasite. It feeds on your fears, your insecurities, your need for validation. Without you, it starves, withers, dies. That's why it fights so hard to survive. Why it clings to every excuse, every justification, every ounce of pride. Because it knows that the moment you let go, the moment you face defeat, learn from it, grow from it, you won't need it anymore. But let's be honest, shall we? Let's pull back the curtain and see the ego for what it really is. Fear. That's all it is. A scared little child throwing a tantrum because it doesn't want to admit it's wrong. It doesn't want to admit it's weak. It doesn't want to admit it's human. But being human, that's not a weakness. No. That's the gift. The ego tries to convince you that being human is a flaw, a crack in your armor, a stain on your perfect little image. But it's not. It's what makes you, you. Because humans are beautifully broken creatures, flawed, imperfect, messy. But that's where the magic is. In the cracks, in the chaos, in the struggle, That's where you find your strength, not in the ego's lies, but in the truth of your humanity. And when you embrace that truth, when you stop running from it, when you let it tear down the walls the ego has built around you, that's when you truly become unstoppable. Not because you're invincible, but because you're willing to face the pain, the fear, the failure. You see, the ego tells you that defeat is the enemy, that losing is the end. But it's not. Defeat is a mirror, a lesson, a chance to start over, to rebuild, to rise from the ashes stronger than before. But the ego? Oh, it doesn't want you to rise. No, no, no. It wants you to wallow, to stew, to sit in the rubble of your defeat and curse the world for tearing you down. Because as long as you do that, as long as you cling to your anger, your bitterness, your pride, the ego stays in control. But when you let go, when you stand up, dust yourself off, and take that first step forward, the ego, it loses its grip. It starts to crumble. And that's the secret, isn't it? The thing the ego doesn't want you to know, the thing it fights tooth and nail to keep hidden. You don't need it. Not to win, not to grow, not to survive. You're stronger than the ego, stronger than its lies, stronger than its fear. But strength, real strength, that doesn't come from the ego. It comes from the pain, from the struggle, from the moments when you're lying on the ground, broken, battered, defeated, and you choose to get back up. Because defeat isn't the end. It's the beginning. It's the moment the mask slips, the moment the lies fall away, the moment you see yourself for who you really are, not who the ego wants you to be. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can let the ego take over, let it drag you back into the dark, back into its cage of lies and illusions. Or you can face the truth, embrace it, learn from it. Because the truth, oh, the truth will set you free. Ah, so you want to hear more, don't you? You want to dig deeper into the madness, the chaos, the beautiful, tragic irony of it all. Let's keep peeling back the layers then. Let's expose the raw, trembling truth that your ego tries so desperately to hide. You see, ego isn't just a parasite. It's a shapeshifter. It doesn't scream, "Look at me." No, it whispers. It hides in the shadows, cloaks itself in noble intentions, convincing you that it's not pride, it's confidence, that it's not arrogance, it's ambition, and you fall for it. Hook, line, sinker. It's subtle, isn't it? Devious. A snake slithering through your mind, planting little seeds of doubt, little whispers of entitlement. And when you fall, when you crash and burn, oh, it doesn't comfort you. It doesn't tell you it'll be okay. No, it fans the flames, makes you burn brighter, hotter, more chaotically. Because if you're burning, you're not thinking. And if you're not thinking, you're not growing. But growth is what the ego fears most. It likes to pretend it's your strength, your armor, your sword and shield. But real strength, that comes from humility, from admitting that you're not perfect, from accepting that you've got a long way to go. The ego doesn't like humility. Oh no, it despises it. Because humility means letting go of the illusion of control, letting go of the need to be the best, the smartest, the strongest. And the ego, it needs that control, feeds on it. Without it, it starves. But humility, that's where the magic happens. That's where you find clarity. Because when you let go of the ego, when you strip away the lies and illusions, you're left with something raw, something real, something unbreakable. You. The ego doesn't want you to see that. It wants you to believe that you're weak without it, that you need it to survive, to thrive, to succeed. But the truth is that the ego is the weakness. It's the leash around your neck, the chains around your ankles, the weight on your shoulders holding you down. And when you lose, when you fall flat on your face, humiliated, defeated, broken, that's the moment the ego panics, because that's the moment you're most vulnerable and the most free. Free to see the world as it is, not as the ego pretends it to be. Free to learn from your mistakes, to adapt, to grow. Free to let go of the fear, the pride, the illusion of invincibility. And that freedom, that's what the ego is most afraid of. Let's talk about failure for a second, shall we? Oh, failure. The big scary monster hiding under the bed. The thing we're all so afraid of. The thing the ego tells you to run from, to avoid at all costs. But failure isn't the monster. Failure is the key. You don't learn by winning. You don't grow by succeeding. You grow by falling, by stumbling, by breaking into a million little pieces and putting yourself back together again, stronger, smarter, wiser. But the ego? It doesn't care about growth, doesn't care about wisdom. All it cares about is the image, the illusion, the mask. And when that mask cracks, when the illusion shatters, the ego screams because it knows it can't survive in the light. So you want to hear more, don't you? You want to dig deeper into the madness, the chaos, the beautiful tragic irony of it all. Let's keep peeling back the layers then. Let's expose the raw, trembling truth that your ego tries so desperately to hide. You see, the ego thrives in the dark, in the shadows of your doubts, your fears, your insecurities. It feeds on them. Grow stronger with every lie you tell yourself, every excuse you make, every time you blame the world instead of looking in the mirror. But the mirror, the mirror is where the truth lives. The truth about who you are, what you've done, and what you're capable of. The truth that you're not perfect, not invincible, not untouchable. And the truth, it's not your enemy. It's your ally, your greatest weapon against the ego's lies. You ever notice how the ego reacts when you succeed? Oh, it loves to take credit, loves to puff out its chest, strut around, act like it's the reason you made it. But when you fail, when you fall short, it scurries into the shadows, hides behind excuses, blames everyone and everything but itself. Because the ego can't handle failure, can't handle the idea that it's not as powerful as it pretends to be, so it deflects, projects, distracts. But you're stronger than that, stronger than the ego's lies, stronger than its fear, stronger than its desperate need to control you. Here's the thing about defeat. It's not the end. It's the beginning. It's the moment the ego is stripped away, the moment you're forced to confront the truth about yourself, the moment you have a choice. You can let the ego take over, let it drag you back into the dark, let it convince you that the world is against you and that you're better off hiding behind its lies. Or you can face the truth, embrace it, learn from it, grow from it. Because the truth, the truth is where your power lies. So, what's it going to be? Are you going to let the ego win? Let it keep you chained to its lies, its fears, its illusions? Or are you going to break free? Are you going to face the pain, the struggle, the chaos of the truth? Because the choice is yours. It's always been yours. The ego doesn't own you. It never has. And the moment you realize that, the moment you take back control, that's the moment you become unstoppable. Not because you're invincible, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And the real you? The real you is more powerful than the ego could ever imagine.